Welcome to the video. Today we're going to be programming a Monte Carlo simulation of the 100 prisoner problem. So let's dive right into it. We're just going to open up a blank Python file and sort of start programming here. It's always good practice to have like an entry clause, even in a language like Python that doesn't really need it. So I'm going to import random just because I know later we're going to need it. By later I mean right now. We're going to set random to just a seed. It's always good practice to have when you're testing it. That way you have reproducible results, even because they're pseudo-random. So you give it a seed, you sort of get random behavior, but you're able to recreate the results. So next thing we want to do is to find the number of prisoners. We're going to call this num prisoners. Okay, so we're going to start small with, say, 4. And then n is going to be our number of trials. So let's start off with, this is 10,000. So we're just going to print this out for debugging purposes, saying our, actually that's a great name, population. Okay. So our population is going to be population, and we're going to print out the number of trials we're doing. I don't know why I indented that so much. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to print out the num of trials in our simulation is going to be n. I see the problem. It's the auto indentation with the colon. Anyway, so the next step is we want to sort of create the situation which the prisoners are in, where they have boxes equal to the number of prisoners, numbered 1 through number of prisoners, so like 1 through the population. So we're going to make a list here of just all the numbers through our population. We'll say, what about population size? I think might be a little more descriptive, right? So we'll say pop size. Okay. Yeah, that's a neat little trick there, where you can substitute out a word. Okay, so we sort of created this scenario, and we'll probably want to measure the number of failed attempts they have, and we'll start that at 0. So now we actually want to do the simulation, right? We have the boxes set up. We have, boxes equal to the number of prisoners. We have the number of prisoners that we have and the trials we want to run in the Monte Carlo simulation. So let's actually make that simulation loop. All right, so this is going to be n trials, and every single time we want to see a different scenario. So we're going to randomize what is in the boxes, because when the prisoners go in, they have no clue what's in there. So we're going to randomize them. This random.shuffle just takes every single item inside of a list and shuffles them around randomly. Again, pseudo-randomly, because we did give it a seed, so we're going to have the same shuffles every single time. Okay, so now we're going to go through and say for every single prisoner, right, so for I through the pop size, we're going to say if they could find their box, and we're going to define this a little bit later. Something is going to go in here. All right, we're going to pass in some parameters, and we're going to say if this is false, we're going to increment the number of failed attempts, because they couldn't find their box, and we're going to break out of this loop here, because we know, okay, we don't need to do the rest of the prisoners because one prisoner could not find the box. So then they're all dead. And that's really all we need. You could do something like this where you say print, oh, I don't know, I found the box. But it's not strictly necessary. And I think doing this, you're going to have a bunch of print statements going around, so I'm just going to comment it out, and if you'd like to include it, you can. Okay, so this is really all we need to do a proper Monte Carlo simulation. Because every iteration here is going to be a completely new set of random boxes, and then we run through the whole population. We see, can every single prisoner find their box? So at the very end, we're going to want to go and print out our results to see how well did this strategy do of whatever find boxes is. So I'm going to start off just by printing a little divider here, because you're going to see later we'll be printing out a lot of stuff. So we're going to do first the number of failed attempts, right? And we're just going to pass in the string itself, or the variable, right? Failed attempts. And then we're going to go again, and we're going to print out, let's see here, the successful attempts. So this is going to be sort of the opposite of what failed attempts is. And so mathematically, it's just going to be the number of trials minus failed attempts, because if you didn't fail it, then you succeeded. So the last thing I want to print out is just this ratio of failed to, or from successful to total trials. Because this gives us sort of a definition of like, how well does this strategy do? And so then this is just going to be the number of trials minus failed attempts divided by the number of trials. And let's see here. Actually, I called number of trials n, right? Yeah. Okay. So this is pretty much all we need, right? Up here, we go and we're setting up. This is sort of our scenario, right? We're defining what the scenario is, right? We have 4 prisoners, and we're going to do 10,000 iterations over those prisoners. This right here is this sort of creates our boxes. And then this is our main simulation loop. So we're just going to call it the simulation loop. So this line, super important. This is where the actual randomization happens. Otherwise, you'd just be doing one trial over and over. And this checks every prisoner can find their box. Okay. So let's actually write this implementation for the find box logic. So we're going to go to the top and make a new method here, find box. And inside of that, we're going to give it a couple of parameters to pass in. So we're first going to give it the number of boxes, or the whole collection of boxes. That way it can check what's there. We're going to give it the prisoner number and the index that we're going to check, and finally the number of checks they have left. So this way we can keep track of how many they have left and if they actually can or did find their box. And it's going to be a Boolean, because either they found it or they didn't find it. So the first thing we're going to do is check if they are still able to find boxes. And if the number of checks they have left is 0, we're going to have to return false, because they checked as many as they could and they never found their box, which means all of them are going to die. Very, very sad. So this is sort of our base case, if you think about it, because this will be an iterative, or a recursive solution, sorry. Anyway, so we're going to next check, does the prisoner find their box? Well, we're going to go to the index we're checking in boxes, and we're going to see, is that equal to the prisoner's number? And if it is, we return true, because they found their box. Now the last case is if they did not find their box, but they're still able to check more. And we're going to implement the most efficient solution to the problem, which I think I cover in another video. We'll see how motivated I get. Where we need to pass all of these things in. So boxes is going to remain unchanged, right? We can't we can't move around slips in the boxes, or we can't indicate somehow or some way we've checked a box, right? It has to be exactly the same for every prisoner. The prisoner's number never changes. That stays the same. But the index we're going to check is just going to be equal to whatever was inside the index we just checked. And of course, we're going to go and decrement remaining checks. That way, over time, it's going to go down. Okay. So that should be enough to run. Oh, we got to pass in those parameters. And for those parameters, it's going to be very, very similar for all the different strategies we do. Because remember, boxes is going to come first. So boxes is just going to be that list. Then the prisoner's number is going to be I, because we're iterating through every prisoner in the population. Then we're going to go and we're going to see, okay, what about the starting index? And if you remember, every prisoner should start at their number. So we're going to start at I. And the remaining checks is going to be equal to the total number of boxes, which is equal to the number of prisoners, divided by 2. And so we just need to make sure that our population size is always going to be a even number. So we can do a little check here. If pop size modulo 2 is not equal to 0, then we're going to print, we'll say, invalid number of prisoners. And we're just going to end the program right here. We're going to say return -1. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I guess this is not valid in Python. So there we go. Look at that. We have a population of 4, and inside we're doing 10,000 trials. And out of those 10,000 trials, they failed 5,801, and they succeeded 4,199 times. And so that's the success ratio there. Okay, so let's try increasing this to, say, 6 prisoners. And we should see it go down. And we do. And we're going to go, and we're going to say, instead of 10,000, let's do 20,000 iterations. So now with 20,000 iterations, went down by a little bit more, from 3.881 to 3.84 something something. So, as we increase the number of iterations we're doing, oh, I guess it went up there. Very, very lucky, I suppose. But as a general trend, they're going to succeed less and less and less. So let's say we do 100,000 iterations, and it's just going to go down and down and down. Same thing with population size. As population size increases, we're going to keep seeing that number go down. Right? They're going to succeed less and less as their odds get worse. But even as their odds are getting worse and worse and worse, it's sort of leveling out. It's like an exponential decay. So their odds went down really quickly at the start, where it was like 0.4 to like 0.38 to 0.4 to 0.34. But now it's sort of leveling out near 0.3, or a little bit above it. So let's go to the actual 100 prisoner problem with 100 prisoners. And when we run it over 100,000 iterations, it's going to take a little bit, but we're going to see how effective this strategy really is. In the meantime, as that's running, I want to implement my personal strategy, the one I came up with. And of course, we'll do random guessing as well. So my strategy is really similar. And you're going to see the nice part of doing this really iterative solution, or a recursive solution, is it makes it really easy to write a new strategy. So in mine, I just had every prisoner start at their index, and then just go to the next one, where they start where they are, and they just look at the number of boxes divided by 2 past them. That way, every single box gets checked equally. you don't end up with all the prisoners checking the same, 50 boxes. All the boxes get checked uniformly. So we're going to go down, and we're going to write another simulation. So this is our main simulation loop. So we're just going to copy all of this, go to the bottom, and run it again. And this time, instead of find box, we're going to do my find box, because this is my strategy. And in my strategy, remember, same things where they start at their number. So prisoner I will start at box I. And so the same thing. We're going to do this again. We're going to see what are the results. So yeah, for the actual 100 prisoner problem, over 100,000 iterations, they won a little bit less than a third of the time. It's pretty dang good. So let's take this back down to, say, to 4 again, just to make things a little bit faster. Run this again. Oh, right. So you got to remember, if we're adding 1 to the index, if we have an index that's the very last prisoner, we're going to be looking at a box that doesn't exist. So what we need to do is modulo by the length of the boxes. This way, it's always going to be a valid index. Well, that's weird, because this is the... Okay, I see what it is. Down here, I forgot to change this to call itself, so it's a recursive function. Instead, it was sort of acting as a helper function, where it started here and then called the actual solution up there. So there we go. Now we have a good result. So as you can see, even with just 4 prisoners, my strategy looks pretty grim. You're only going to survive 8% of the time. Right? Only 8,000-ish out of 100,000 iterations. And you're going to see that we increase it to even just 8 prisoners. And yeah, that's very grim odds right there. About 0.5%. But I do want to showcase that my strategy is better than random guessing. So we're going to implement some random guessing here. Okay, so we're going to say random find box, or just rand find box. And actually, we will just copy it again, because again, these are all very similar strategies with just some very small changes. So over here, we're going to not make the same mistake. And instead of going to the next box in order, or going to whatever index the box tells you to, we're going to go random, randint, from 0 to the length of boxes -1. So this is basically says it doesn't really matter what box you're at, just pick another random box. Could be the one you're at, maybe not, who knows. So that's all we're going to do. And again, we're going to add another simulation loop. And we're going to print out the results for that. So we're going to change this into random find box. So remember, mine looks pretty grim. But theirs is even worse, where they have 0.1%. At least I have 0.5%. But yeah, so this is how you do Monte Carlo simulation for the 100 prisoner problem. And I just want to showcase for 16 exactly how quickly our strategies fall off. Yeah, so you can see I do succeed once, but pretty much dumb luck. And even just 10. Things look really, really bad. But I'm very proud my strategy performs better than randomly. Anyway, that is all I have for the video today. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And yeah, come back next time.